Welcome to the EX podcast, where I talk with business leaders, authors, and disruptors on how the workplace is changing. This podcast brings a different lens to the conversation around HR transformation, company culture, and employee engagement. It offers a brand and customer experience perspective rather than a traditional HR perspective. Why? Because companies have to think of themselves as employment brands if they help to attract and retain talent. It is time we put people first to rehumanize the workplace. Simply because leaders who don't care about their employees will eventually be surrounded by people who don't care about their business. Today's guest is Adam Goodman, CEO of Goodmans Interior Structures. Today with Adam, we talk about how he applies the founding principles of Conscious Capitalism to his organization, how the responsibility of the CEO and the leadership team has changed as it relates to truly caring for the whole person and not just for the employee. Why is it important for him to show his employees he cares about their well-being? What his company has implemented to bring to life its culture of caring and well-being, and how it translates on a daily basis. And finally, how he measures the success of implementing employee-centric initiatives and their impact on the business. Support for this podcast is brought to you by Life Guides. Life Guides is an innovative company that partners with organizations to help them better support their employee families through their big and small life challenges that usually impact their vitality, focus at work, and their overall well-being inside and outside of work. Life Guides created a platform to leverage three of the most valuable and untapped resources on the planet: life experience, human connection, and wisdom. The heartbeat of the company revolves around trained guides who are ready and available to give your employees the relief they need. Find out more at www.lifeguides.com. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Adam. Because it takes a good amount of time to produce this podcast, please make sure to review the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, and Spotify, as it would help promote the content. If you want me to speak at your next event, get some advice on your EX initiatives, or send me feedback and suggestions for future topics and guests, you can reach me at svincent@exsummit.com or on Twitter at EX_summits. All right, let's get to it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the EX podcast. I'm super excited for today's guest, Adam Goodman. Adam is calling from Phoenix, and he's the CEO of Goodmans Interior Structures. Adam, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Tell us a bit more about who Adam Goodman is.
I think the most common word people would use to describe me is devastatingly handsome. I think devastatingly handsome pretty much
That's awesome.
Sums it up. What else do you want to know? I'll tell you this. I'm in a third generation family business. It's a 65-year-old company, and if there's one thing I knew growing up, it's that this is not the business I wanted to be in. I wanted to be a newspaper publisher, pretty much since high school, I think. And the reason is because I love how newspapers impact a community. I love how newspapers can make a difference, can change a community. They can set the agenda. Still to this day, if any listeners have snarky comments about fake news or whatever, I'm not buying it at all. At least in terms of newspapers. Maybe cable television news is a whole different story. But newspapers still have the power to set the agenda and to make change. And that's what I wanted to be a part of. But my father came to me when I was in my 20s and suggested that if I ever want to be part of a family business, I better do it now because I was going to be too late at some point. And this was quite an opportunity, a third generation family business. So I came into the business, and I realized after some time that it was a fun and challenging industry, but it wasn't personally fulfilling. And reflecting back on what it was about newspapers that I cherished so much, and it was, as I said, is that ability to make an impact. So this is about right around before the recession. I completely reframed the whole company. We're an office furniture distributorship, but I completely reframed why we do what we do and made it to be about making an impact on the community. And that has animated me ever since. And it gives me a purpose and a reason to get up out of bed in the morning and come to work. And although the things we do haven't changed, we're still selling cubicles and file cabinets and chairs and tables. The reason we do it and how we impact the community is much clearer. And so you asked the question, who is Adam Goodman? And the best thing I can tell you is I'm someone who's driven to make an impact, make change in the community for the better. And devastatingly handsome. Which
I love this part.
My benefit.
So you're an active member of Conscious Capitalism, and what you just said is related to the question here. And for some of our listeners who are not necessarily familiar with what Conscious Capitalism is, can you tell us what are the founding principles and how you apply them to your organization?
Yeah, sure. There is a book, Conscious Capitalism. So there's literally a textbook definition, which I'm not going to give you. You can, your listeners can Google that, and I don't even know it off the top of my head. However, I have a definition, a shorthand version of it that I prefer. And the two critical things I think about conscious capitalism that differentiates it are, number one, it's about thinking about the long term instead of the short term. So instead of thinking about days and weeks and months and quarters, it's about thinking about years and even decades. Among our leadership team, we talk a lot in terms of change that'll happen over decades. And it's a third generation, 65-year-old business. That is how we are wired. So that's number one, is thinking about the long term instead of the short term. Number two, it's about thinking about all the stakeholders of an organization and not just the shareholders. So many companies, the purpose of the company is just to maximize wealth for the people that own it. And while I'm not against that by any stretch, and we certainly do pursue that ambition, but it's not exclusive to the needs of all the other stakeholders, including our employees, first and foremost, our customers, our suppliers, the greater community of Phoenix, the Tucson and Albuquerque as well, and planet Earth for that matter, and the country. Like these are all stakeholders in the company. And so as a leadership team, when we make decisions, we are thinking through all those stakeholders and how it affects them. We can't get win on all the stakeholders every time. But it's being aware when we run the risk of leveraging one stakeholder against the others. So your follow-up question is, how do we apply them in an organization? Well, I guess I just gave you an example. The leadership team is thinking about decisions in that framework, and we're talking about long-term solutions. Actually, this will probably segue into some questions you'll have coming up if I have a sense of where we're going. And when you have that kind of mindset, it naturally puts the employee well-being becomes right up front and center, and their whole being. So that's their physical wellness, their mental wellness, their personal ambitions and dreams. Those all become part of what we want to help facilitate for people, because we expect that they're going to be working here for their entire careers if they choose. And so it's in everyone's best interest to keep in mind their long-term goals and how do we facilitate them. That causes some disruption inside the company on a micro level as we try to help people realize that next goal. And it often looks like someone who's really good at their job today but wants to grow into something else. We support that thoroughly, but it always creates a vacuum right behind where they left that we have to figure out how to fill. Those are good problems to have, but make no mistake, that's a problem.
And you're on a business; it's a for-profit organization, so your goal is to make money, obviously. So how do you balance the profitability and profit margin, revenue side of things with the more impactful and meaningful and purposeful side of the business, where you want to make an impact on, as you mentioned, different stakeholders, the community, the employees, the environments, the customers? How do you balance the traditional capitalism purpose and a more social responsible side?
So I guess the way I'd answer that is the purpose of the company is the purpose of the company. And so that's why we're here. Now we can't pursue that unless we have profit, right? Mm-hmm. So that's it's in that sequence. So we have to that instructs how we balance it right there. We're here to achieve our mission, our vision, to achieve our purpose, but it ain't no good if we can't keep the lights on. Maybe this will answer your question. We start each year with 3 goals for the company, and it's the same 3 goals. The metrics change periodically, but it's the same 3 goals, and they are in sequence. And the goals go like this. Number 1, we want to create a great place to work for employees. It's a based on the best places to work survey. It's a metric we can measure based on the survey. So we want to create a great place to work. That is number 1 goal. Number 2 goal is our customer satisfaction metric that we want to hit. We survey all of our customers. And so there's a number we're always trying to target, 98.5 this year. And then 3rd is a net profit goal we're trying to hit. And the thing I talk a lot about with the company is those are in sequence. Those are in priority order there. And so it is not uncommon. We will hit the first 2 goals and fall short of the 3rd goal. And that's a win. That's a win. I'm okay with that. We have to be profitable. But to the extent we have to hit that target and be on it, that's not the end all be all. It's important. It just happens to be the 3rd most important thing.
As employees bring their home life to work and their work life back home, how has the responsibility of the CEO and the leadership team changed as it relates to truly caring for the whole person, not just the employee?
I was moved by a comment I read several years ago that our employees don't belong to us; they belong to their families, and we're just borrowing them. And so they come here in the morning, and they go home at night. And our responsibility as a leadership team is to return them back to their families in better condition than we got them in the morning. And that's a really profound way to think about how you engage with the people. And it drives a lot of thinking about what we have to do. Everything from, we have a nap pod in our office. It's a device that you get in, close it off, put on headphones, and it rocks you to sleep and then wakes you up 20 minutes later. And it's because there is a sleep epidemic in the country, and everybody thinks they can function on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. This job is stressful. I don't want to pretend it's not. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts. It's stressful. But the home life of employees is also stressful, spouses and kids and all that. And, too many people are burning at both ends. And so we strongly encourage people to get in there to take a nap and recharge. Lots of wellness programs. I'm looking at my office, and there's someone on the treadmill desk right now, getting a mile or two in while they're working on a project on their laptop. I don't know if you could hear the noise behind me, but at the beginning of this conversation, it got real loud around me, and that's because there was a stretching, our daily 11 o'clock stretching class was going on. So these are all things that we're doing to really help people think through. That's a lot of physical wellness. From the mental side, we're looking to we're paying a lot of attention to conflict and coaching people through conflict and personal development skills and communication skills. And it's not all right to be disrespected. We don't stand for that, because we want to return people to home in better condition when they came. So there's a lot of thinking about that. And spiritually, this kind of, sometimes feels like a bit of a third rail in the workplace, but we go there. And so we have had several clergy come in for lunch and learns from different faiths, Muslim, Jewish, Christian. We've had them all. And they come in and talk about concepts of spirituality in the workplace, and from they come at it from different perspectives. The ethical perspective, it's working with people, working with customers, ethics, all those sorts of things. So it's always a really interesting conversation when we bring the clergy in, and they're really popular. The room is packed because people are yearning for this opportunity to do something more than and be worth something more than just a cog in the wheel. It's why this purpose is so important to us, that we can attract people who want to be part of something larger than themselves. They want to make an impact. And while their skill set may be limited to, limited's probably the wrong word, but their skill set may be best suited for office furniture, design, installation, whatever it may be. They know by working here that they can have a bigger impact. They can be part of something bigger than themselves. And that's fulfilling in a whole other way that, not much else is. And so that's what we're trying to create here.
It's much deeper and much bigger than what some companies do that are more promotional marketing related, such as ping pong tables or beer Fridays or whatever. It's much more meaningful to you. So why is it important for you to show your employees that you care about their well-being?
You say what is important? Is that the question?
Why is it important for you?
Important? Well, I guess I kind of answered that question, but it's. I think the difference of what you just asked me, I was sort of talking about it from a company standpoint,
mm-hmm.
and what you made it personal there.
Yes.
And that is, I'm aware. I haven't always, as I said, I haven't always been in this business. I worked outside the family business for a while, and I keenly remember what it's like to be an employee. And getting some attention from the publisher, whatever it was always meaningful. And I'm aware that I can confer some dignity and pride on somebody with just a comment. I can also easily tear it down with just a comment, and that's a big responsibility. I make it a point almost every day to write a handwritten note to an employee, thanking them for helping us pursue our mission almost every single day. And I'm looking for internal comments. Someone says something nice, I catch on to it, or a customer. Frequently, it's usually a customer who has a nice comment to say about one of our people. And I write the handwritten note, which obviously helps them understand it personalizes it. But it goes home because I want their families to see it, and I want their families to have pride in the job that our employee is doing, and how the key to the notes is they tie the daily activity of whatever the person was doing, installing furniture, designing, sales, whatever it was, tying to how that is making an impact in the bigger community, how the important work that you did today has a greater impact. And that absolutely creates a lot of pride at home. And so that's irreplaceable.
And what you just said comes with a lot of vulnerability and openness on your side as well. And I would say many leaders try to build that wall or that barrier between being too human and, having that sort of distance that they feel is necessary towards the employees, because they don't want to step over that line on being too friendly or too emotional with them. How do you find that right balance personally, and how you approach this employee relationship?
I don't subscribe to that, as you probably guessed. I'm really comfortable being vulnerable. In fact, I sent a note yesterday, company-wide note, all employees, talking about my self-esteem and lack thereof, despite my insistence that I'm devastatingly handsome. If you couldn't tell, that was some sort of cover. That was bluster. It was. I actually in an email that can get forwarded around and sent. Who knows where that is going to go? But talked about my self-esteem issues I struggle with, like anybody else, and I'm not afraid of that. I embrace that. There's certainly great power comes in expressing vulnerability, being self-aware enough, first of all, to understand where your insecurities are, and then having the confidence to be able to talk about it.
You talked earlier about the 3 goals that
I don't want to interrupt. I'm sorry, just to interrupt you. I just want to confirm something for a second. Do you like me?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have you on the podcast.
I just needed a little validation right in the middle of the podcast. Okay, that's good. Sorry about that. Yeah,
no,
keep going. You were going to ask.
So you mentioned earlier that you set three goals for the year. Great places to work for your employees, customer satisfaction, and then net profitability. Mm-hmm. How do you measure the success and impact on the business performance of the implementation of those more employee-centric initiatives?
I don't think it's going to be an answer that is going to be popular, but I don't really care. We don't really pay any attention to that. I'm not looking for an ROI on it. It's the kind of culture I want to be in. It's the kind of company I want to lead, and the moment I start chasing some sort of productivity metric. Mm-hmm. That's I'm going to start making decisions based on the wrong thing. I do it because it's the right thing to do, and if that means it's bad for productivity or something like that, well then that's the price we have to pay. Now we do pay attention to retention numbers, of course, and the other number I pay a lot of attention to that I'm super proud of is the boomerang employees who leave to find greener pastures and then eventually come back. And so our percentage of the second timers is very high, and really proud. We welcome them back with open arms.
And that is nice, because many companies see the separation moments, and whatever the separation is, whether it's voluntary or involuntarily separation, but they see this as the end of a relationship. And on your side, you see this as just a part of the journey, and you leave the door open for people to come back at some point if they desire to, and if you have a need for them?
I don't want to pretend I'm not devastated when they leave, and that's probably tied to the self-esteem thing. It feels like a rejection of me personally. I get really, really bothered by it, but I don't. That's not my posture. My posture is as much as I can is, hey, good for you. What a great opportunity. The door is always open. And then I drown my sorrows in a Snickers bar later on. We all got our coping mechanisms, right? Now you know mine.
And just to boost your self-esteem, you can see that a way that you've done such a great job of growing them personally and professionally that they go out to a new venture because of what you provided to them while they were working for you.
Thanks for saying that. I appreciate that. Our general manager from Tucson, he was probably 40 when he came to work for us, and really got inspired by the idea of making an impact on the community. And he left a couple years ago with exactly those words. He said, you've helped me discover something about myself, and I want to see where else I can use my skills to go make an impact. And so he and I are still very close, and I talk to him regularly, and he is killing it out there and really making a difference. To your point, I couldn't be more proud of him. That's great. Love to have him back, but he's doing what he should be doing.
And it's always good to build an alumni network as well, because some of the employees may not come back, but at least they can refer prospective candidates to your organization too.
Absolutely.
Can you share with us maybe a story of how one of your employees' life was positively impacted by you caring for their well-being?
There's lots of great stories. We got a bunch of we do a lot of biometrics analysis. Blood screenings and ultrasounds, and just bring someone into, and we've had several times where the technician says to the employee, "You got to leave here right now. Go straight to the hospital. You got some problems that are about to happen." And that's literally saved some lives. There's one I'm really proud of too. An example is I worked with a professional coach who, he's a coach. He does what coaches do, and really helped with my communication skills primarily. And I was so impressed with what he taught me and how he taught me that I have brought him in for employees. And he would spend 2 weeks a year every quarter here. We don't work with him anymore, but we did for 3 or 4 years. 2 weeks every quarter at a coach's fees, right? Which those are not cheap.
No, they're not.
And I would run employees through working with him, and it absolutely changed many people's lives. And these are skills that weren't professional. They weren't necessarily office-based skills. It was about, it's a little too much to go into now, but what it was all about. But let's put it this way. It applied much more to personal life and particularly home life and married life and parenting than it necessarily did to the office. And I knew that, but it was such a gift to be able to give people to do. And it just, you just saw some people really take off and blossom as they built these skills. And I'm totally gratified by how that impacted people.
How do you respond to those who associate culture, I would say the skeptics, who associate culture and employee well-being and wellness with treating a company as a social experiment?
Tell me more what you mean about that. I think I know, but I want to hear more what you mean.
Well, in the traditional capitalistic way of thinking in terms of organizations, it's more about you've got to be productive. You come here to work. You get a paycheck in exchange for your contribution. But we don't really care about you as a person, or we don't really care about your well-being. While organizations like yours, even though you've been in business for a long time, you still sort of experimenting and testing things as you go along, because you continue to evolve to meet new demands from the workforce, basically.
Oh, I think you're starting to answer it yourself, actually. But the Mylan Pharmaceuticals, the Martin Shkreli, the guy who raised the prices on the life-saving drug for kids in anaphylactic shock, the EpiPen, and he raised it like 700% or whatever ridiculous thing it was, or the Sackler family with the whole opioid deal. Those are companies who existed to create a profit for the owners, and that's it. And if that's all it is, if that's what you're here for, you can do that. That's easy. And there's lots of corners you can cut, and there's lots of stakeholders you can offend, and you can always find a way to make that buck. And at the end of the day, if that's what your life's about, well, I guess that's what your life's about. But I just feel like I have a responsibility to more than just the shareholders. There's other people who are important to me and involved here, and I got to be thinking about their needs as well. And I think in the long run, that's how. But look, capitalism's under assault right now, and and the fact that millennials look at socialism by almost a 51%, I think, is a metric. 51% look at socialism as a favorable alternative. And a guy running for president calling himself a socialist. In Congress, you got some social, like that's a reaction to that narrow-minded view of capitalism, where the only thing we exist for is to create wealth for the shareholder. And so, if we don't change ourselves, and if we don't wake up and start to pay more attention to the other stakeholders, we're going to have rules imposed upon us by the coming generation, and that's going to suck, and it's not going to work very well. And so I'm hoping that, and honestly, that's why I like doing podcasts like this. It's I'm not talking to you today because I think your listeners are going to need conference tables, although we're running a special this month on conference tables. So all your listeners know, $9.99. No, it's not that at all. I put myself out there to help inspire other companies to start thinking differently about the way they engage, and hopefully we can turn the tide and help the millennial generation and these people who prefer socialism to understand that capitalism is the greatest achievement in the history of mankind, and it's the best way we have to address our social ills. We got so many social ills of income inequality and poverty and race. Like there's just so many problems we got going on, and almost every one of them, a creative entrepreneur can find a way to use the mechanisms of capitalism to solve the problem, and that's powerful stuff, right? So there you go. There's my soapbox.
No, you brought a very interesting topic, and not going into politics, because I can, being a European, being French, I can talk a lot about what socialism is. But you made a good point of talking about the right balance between capitalism and more of, I would call, social responsibility. So do you see the conscious capitalism movements or the social enterprise movements as just a trendy thing to do right now, or something that is much deeper and much more long-term?
Come on. I'm going to let you answer that question yourself. It was a leading question. You know the answer to that question.
Well, I want you to answer that question. I know your answer, but I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, for sure. Of course. I mean, it has to be. I mean, I think that was the first thing I said. The first thing I said was devastatingly handsome. I think the second thing I said was it's about thinking about the long term.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, definitely fads and trends. We have chair fabrics that are fads and trends. Those will come and go. Like this, it's enduring, and it's meant to last for decades and centuries.
So, do you think that this type of mindset is something that is anchored much more deeply in some individuals versus others, or is it that anybody can embrace that mindset?
Yeah. The funny thing is, the mindset that the counter mindset about we're only here for the shareholders or to maximize profits for the investors. That's temporary. Mm-hmm. Like that's the fad. That got its legs in a magazine essay that Milton Friedman wrote in 1970. It was just a magazine essay. Like that's it. It was like, and it influenced everything after that. And so the greed of the 80s, like that's all came right out of that magazine essay. Mm-hmm. And Wall Street movie and all the greed is good from Gordon Gekko, all that stuff. Well, if you zoom out and look at the larger context of capitalism and its history, this is a blip. And so, I believe it will that will fade away, and we'll get back to this idea of a social purpose, as you're talking about, or better to say, concern for all stakeholders in the long term.
So let me ask you a few personal questions before we wrap up our conversation today. If you were to invite a historical figure to dinner or someone famous, who would you choose and why?
I'll say I'm the first name that comes to mind is I'm a huge fan all my life of Charles Schulz of Peanuts, the Snoopy characters, and I'm a bit of a savant. To this day, you can open up any one of the books, hundreds of books, open any one up, cover up the last square of the 4 panels, and I can tell you the punchline because I've read them so many times, I know them so many times. So I would love to meet and have dinner with Charles Schulz. Not the answer you were expecting, was it?
No, it's the first. It's the first time I've heard it's on the podcast, but it's awesome. I love it. I love the Peanuts too. You talked about vulnerability earlier. What was your biggest screw up at work, and what did you learn from it?
Oh my gosh. It's funny. I have a physical reaction as I reflect on the day, either on the way to work or in the shower, whatever I'm doing, I'm reflecting on the previous day. And my mind naturally goes to like dumb things I said. That time I called myself devastatingly handsome on a podcast, for example, or just stupid stuff that I'm not proud of. And I physically wince. It's pretty funny. I just did it actually just now. And so there are so many of them. However, I think a good muscle that I have developed is to move on. And so I don't have a big strategic issue off the top of my head, but I got thousands of little stupid stuff that I'm always trying to forget.
What sound or noise do you love?
What sound or noise do I love?
Yes.
All right, here's another one that might be surprising. I'm a big Grateful Dead fan.
Oh.
And that I can listen to that. There's so many hundreds, thousands of recorded live shows, none of it alike. And so I find it relaxing, invigorating, like whatever I need to do. I Grateful Dead in the background gets me there.
What sound or noise do you hate?
What sound or noise do you hate? I would say incivility. Civility is my number one value, and incivility is my number one, noise that I hate. Let's put it that way. And it comes in so many different forms, and it's just intolerable to me. That's
quite uncommon as well. I love it. What is your favorite word?
My favorite word, I think it's I got a tie, and neither one of them are English actually. In Spanish, I love the word impermeable, which I think means umbrella, but I always like that word.
Okay.
And in Hebrew, it's vidibartabam, which I have no idea what it means, but it's fun to say. Vidibartabam. So that's it right there.
That's funny. What is your least favorite word? Can't.
Nope, I can't. Can't do it. Nope, that can't be done. Nope, we can't do that. Can't.
Nice.
I can't do that. Can't. What
is the way for our listeners to follow you and Goodmans on social media?
Oh, this might be the most fun answer of all. My personal Twitter handle is @damn_good_man no underscore. So it's a damn good man with underscores. You get it?
Yes.
Well, you're not laughing.
No, I was waiting for something else too.
Oh, a damn good man. Yeah, so that's how my name breaks up. Adam Goodman, a damn good man. And the company is at Goodman's Good Guy on Twitter, Facebook, and whatever other social media you follow.
That's right, and that's quite creative. Love it, and just playing with the name too.
Okay, I was waiting for that. You were a little slow on that response. I told you my self-esteem is wrapped up in today's conversation. So.
Any last word of advice or wisdom for our listeners?
I just spoke to a group of middle managers, like leadership development group at a big school district here in town, and they asked me that question. And I think the question was, what advice would you give to your 30-year-old self, something like that? Mm-hmm. And I didn't miss a beat, and I'll give it to you as well, to your listeners, the men. This is for the men in the audience, which is Lululemon's got these pants, these dress pants that are super comfortable, and they look like dress pants, flax pants, but they're not. They're breathable, they're flexible, they're stretchable, and they look great. And go buy as many pairs as you can, because they're. I wish I had known this 20 years ago. Again, is that what you're looking for? I don't know. There you go. See, this is one of those things I'm going to be cringing on.
When you listen back to the podcast.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. No, just thinking about it tomorrow, like, why did I say that?
So should I edit it out or should I keep it?
Keep it in. Keep it raw. It's fine.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adam. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for tuning in to the EX Podcast. If you want to learn more, visit our website at expodcast.com. If you want to find out more about our next conferences, go to exsummit.com. Finally, you can also find my manifesto on business to employee or B2E branding at b2ebranding.co. See you next week.